a good-hearted woman in struggle, Sophie to maintain her tiny diner's viability. An old man is seen standing outside the chilly, exhausted and hungry. Unable to reject him, instead, she invited him inside, provided him with a hot lunch to relieve his hunger in just 1 hour. A huge pickup pulled up outside the diner and drove away, behind a number of enigmatic boxes that left Sophie speechless upon witnessing what was. She was unaware of her small act on the inside. Of kindness was going to transform her. Life in ways that she never. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revealed Stories. I have another one today. An emotional tale to tell. Sophie has always wished to possess her own restaurant, a comfortable space where she might be able to share her passion for preparing. Her mother fostered her passion from at an early age following years of saving, and she and her sister have made innumerable sacrifices. At last, Emma fulfilled their mutual ambition, transforming their enthusiasm into reality, a career. With the start of their only a week at Cozy Diner this morning, a client is seated close to enjoying a heated vegetable by the window. The customer remarks, "This stew is fantastic." Grinning, I glance up at Sophie. It has the flavor of something my grandmother used to make. Sophie's pride-filled heart leap as she gives them thanks. Her smile beaming with moments of true warmth, like these, makes she believes that all of the effort has been worthwhile. It each morning prior to the dawn. Emma and Sophie go right into their routine. Without the funds to hire employees, they manage. Emma is in control of everything herself, cutting vegetables in the kitchen and working next to Sophie while kneading dough, her sharing suggestions, modifying recipes and flavorful food to ensure each bite demonstrates their mutual passion for food. After being pleased with the tastes, and Sophie focuses on specifics, setting up tables in the front of the home, incorporating minor ornamental elements and establishing a welcoming environment where each the diner's patron feels comfortable operating it. But every duty is not a simple one, firmly positioned on their shoulders from cooking the morning's first meal to cleaning the final table at night. They are on their feet all the time. They had spent every last cent of their savings into making the dining area come to life by covering, renting furniture and equipment, and adorning the area with coziness and charm. Even though the hours are long, and Sophie continues to put in constant effort, oneself relishing the little moments, that happiness that comes from managing the restaurant. As she cleans the table that has the client had just eaten, a kind grin remains on her face after the praise. He described the food. She approached the window for curtain adjustment, but pauses halfway outside the window. Observes an old man who is wrapped in his hands were buried deep in the worn coat. Pockets to protect you from the morning frost, as his eyes dart between the diner's light and warmth, as well as the pavement underfoot, as if considering whether to enter Sophie's with a tightened heart. She moves away from the window. She made a snap decision. She approaches the door and opens it. The man glances up in surprise at her abrupt, "Good morning, presence," she murmurs softly. She spoke with the same warmth as "Would you like to visit the diner itself?" The man's hands tremble inside. His pockets are getting tighter, "And I don't have a lot of money," he whispers, his voice hardly audible. Sophie shakes her head audibly with a kindly grin. "And don't worry about that. We'll have a seat, warm up," and he looks after the others for a time, as if he might decline, but the compassion in her gaze and the sincere her tone of welcome makes it. He nods slowly, but it's impossible to say no. Keeps the door open when entering. The diner's warmth immediately. Sophie embraces him and points to a comfortable corner table. "Have a seat and get ready." As the man lowers, she adds, "Comfortable." Carefully settling himself into the chair, Sophie gives him a menu. "Study it over and make a decision." "Anything you want," she offers kindly, wishing to give him a sense of respect, and the man accepts the menu in his hands, shaking, his gaze sweeping the after careful consideration. Sophie observes his finger descending slowly at more difficult meals. The page pauses momentarily, before going even lower after his finger lingers for a moment before stopping. At the most affordable item, in a quiet, almost hesitating tone, he speaks. "The coffee and toast will do." Sophie experiences a surge of empathy. The dish he has selected is hardly complicated, enough to satisfy the hunger that she observes engraved on his face. Yet his humility and self-respect is evident in this tiny pretend to nod while gently leaning into it's a good choice to speak in a gentle and low voice. Let me see what's going on in the kitchen. Emma, I'll be back in the kitchen shortly. Looks up as Sophie is making dough, enters and inquires, "What's up?" Observing Sophie's contemplative look. Sophie the man puts the menu on the counter. He is presently outdoors and has requested toast and coffee, and I don't believe he's attempting to avoid forcing Emma's eyes to soften without hesitation. She begins putting together a tray. Let's offer him. How about we do something cozy and satisfying? Assemble some pie and soup, using the Sophie's heart swells as she smiles at the toast. With appreciation for Emma's prompt, she shows compassion by giving a tiny grateful nod, which is just what he necessitates, she adds. Emma rushes to work, making a rich tomato steaming bowl soup, as well as cutting 2 big portions of. She tops the golden crispy cheese toast with a warm apple pie piece onto the tray, putting it next to the toast that was desired, and this coffee will help him feel better. Emma nods contentedly. Sophie retrieves the tray and returns to the dining room. As she moves toward she carefully sets the tray on the elderly guy. "Here we go," she says in front of him. A smile, coffee, toast, and a bit more to get you warmed up. The man's eyes enlarge upon seeing he claims, "I didn't order all of this." His voice was soft. Sophie pulls out the chair in protest, opposite him, and has a meeting. His eyes with a warm grin. "I'm sure," she murmurs softly. "Yet the weather is chilly, and please note that toast by itself won't keep you warm. Take delight in this, it's our pleasure." Pauses, his hands lingering above the spoon before turning to face her again. His voice murmurs, "You're too kind." Sophie waves it off, loaded with emotion. Not at all, but with a smile. "Now eat," while as the man takes his first. It's warm. Sophie took a timid mouthful of the soup, keeps sitting and conversing with him. Her kindness and attentiveness are subtle, gradually relieve his discomfort and the tension. She starts to melt away in his shoulders. The purpose is to demonstrate, not only to feed him that he is seen, that he belongs, and revered. As the old man takes another hesitant spoonful of his soup, posture starts to ease. The heat of the meal appears to calm more than simply his. Sophie observes him silently out of hunger, allowing him to determine the speed of the clinking of his spoon during the discourse, the bowl filling the quiet till he looks up, his interest fluttering in. He is worn out. He starts speaking quietly as he looks around this diner. But more stable today, warm and few locations like this no longer exist. Sophie grins despite a hint of fatigue stays behind her eyes, and we've only been open a week. She states in a light tone, but with a hint of silence. Emma and I poured our determination. Everything we brought with us to this location, as the man nodded. That had been our dream for years. He looked around the room gently. The vacant tables and chairs appear to talk more loudly than she does, and he observes how meticulously each feature has placed on the gleaming counter. The napkin is folded neatly. Wild flowers in a little vase on each table. The diner is obviously a labor of affection, but it feels heavy to be empty. Despite his busy schedule, he asks his eyes. Sophie is hesitant to return to her for a moment before responding. She quietly acknowledges that we've had a few clients. Word of mouth, mostly from locals, takes time, and we lack the funding for. The man takes another bite of advertisement. His gaze straying about the space. He looks at the refrigerator in the its motor, was humming unevenly at the turn before. With a tiny splutter, he tilts his head and points with his fork at it. The sound of that refrigerator being on its last. Sophie looks over her shoulder at her legs. Noticing the slight sound, she emits a cleaning the counter with a tiny sigh. Purposeful, we have been attempting to make things work. Work with what we have, she adds. Almost all of the equipment was hers, his used coffee that was purchased 3 days ago. The refrigerator is currently broken because the machine misbehaving and assisting them in what we'd put away for the rent for the following month. Words fade, and for a brief instant the man hesitates, seemingly lost in thought, momentarily looking down at his bowl before turning to face her again with, "What are you going through? And why are you so kind to someone like me?" he inquires gently. His voice became quiet, appreciation and sincere. Sophie pauses the question out of curiosity. She was surprised by her expression. "My mother used to say that no one should soften, should go hungry," she responds in a low voice. For a little while, her attention wandered. She was a wonderful chef who showed Emma and myself how to turn nothing into something and place love into each and every dish. The man pays close attention to his spoon. A slight smile appears while he is still holding it, despite it not reaching his eyes. He says she sounds like a fantastic woman. Sophie nods gently, her smile slightly tinted with, she was devastated when she died a few years ago, but it's thanks to her that we're here now, is how we maintain her spirit. For a brief instant, the man doesn't react. His gaze falls to his hands, and unconsciously, he flips a vintage watch on his despite being worn. The wristwatch shines. In the dim light of the diner, Sophie observes how his fingers cling to it. As though it contains a recollection he isn't prepared for, he looks at the watch to share, then at the door. His face far away from my wife once said anything along such lines. He opens his mouth and murmurs almost to himself. Lips to utter more, but the words don't come instead. He inhales deeply and gives Sophie a dim, "This soup is truly special, so smile. Sophie, your mother would be extremely proud of you." With a soft smile, "Thank you, you're welcome." To visit at any moment, the man pauses his look, she says, calming down as he examines her face. "What's your name?" Is Sophie, and she responds to her tone. Calm but gentle, he nods softly, as though storing the name in his mind, inscrutable expression as he collects his coat and stands. But he pauses near the entrance. "Don't give up," he adds softly, holding up his hand. Lying on the manage, sometimes it's the tiny areas that are most important, and with that he exits into the diminishing light. Departing, Sophie is seen standing in the silent dining room. Questions circling around my mind about from the rear. The man and his tail, Emma's voice yells, dragging her away from her ideas. "Hey Sophie, could you please give me?" Sophie turned back toward a hand. A little sigh from the kitchen prior to intervening to support her sister. Emma's voice came when she was knee-deep in dishes. Breaking the silence as she inquired, "Need assistance with pantry organization?" Sophie joined her without hesitation, and together they navigated the well-known, their usual stacking plate actions, cleaning countertops, and making sure the inventory. Occasionally, both of them looked in the direction of the front entrance, motions that pause for a brief moment, wishing to listen to the gentle chime that indicated a patron, but the diner stayed motionless, with only noises emanating from the refrigerator's quiet hum and as they worked. The plates clattered softly. As the minutes stretched into an hour, the silent reminder was provided by vacant seats. Considering how slowly the morning had been, abruptly, the far-off roar of a monotony was broken by the engine. Emma paused as Sophie's head shot upward. While working, the low rumble became louder, and Sophie went to her heart's window. Without a beat, a huge vehicle. It's dark as I pull up outside the diner. The outside shone in the sunlight, darkened windows that give it a foreboding atmosphere. Emma asked, her voice, "Who could that be?" Low as she sat by the window with Sophie. Sophie's eyes took a moment to respond. Mounted on the vehicle, as a number of men climbed out and made deliberate movements. Their solemn facial expressions that correspond with they started emptying onto unmarked crates. One of the males walked up to the sidewalk, the door, and entered. He peered around for a moment before his gaze settled on, "Are you Sophie?" He said in a tone that, "Yes," she said, in a bland but forceful tone, carefully using her apron to wipe her hands. Emma showed up next to her in an equal measure. Bewildered without any clarification, the man gave his squad a signal, and they started. Sophie was moving the boxes into the dining room, and Emma looked at each other in confusion. "Wait, what happened?" Before Sophie discovered her voice. The man, "Did we not order anything?" His expression halted. "Illegible, we are only adhering directions that the sender stated you would be aware of." Emma scowled. "What should I do? Who sent this?" The man shrugged and asked what was in the crates. "Something significant, something that could I just want to help make this area better." Sophie's stomach was churning. "But we didn't place an order, and we are unable to afford it. The worker has already been paid." Interrupted. "You have no debt." Sophie's mind was racing, yet she was unable to can't help but consider the old man. From he was the only one earlier that morning. She had discussed the diner with challenges, but how could he be the one? Hardly able to pay for a meal, let alone pay for something similar on their own. Perhaps it was someone else. But she shook her head in an attempt to get her ideas. as Emma put her finger on her arm and face with a mixture of worry and interest. Before Sophie could reply, the noise of boxes being placed close to the men were drawn to. The counter had completed stacking and unloading. One of the boxes was straightened up and nicely packed, and looked at Sophie. "That's all. Good luck," he replied, nodding. And with that, everyone got out of the truck's engine. Roaring to life before vanishing, Emma and Sophie were standing down the street. Quiet while gazing at the stack of boxes, the diner's silence felt heavier now. Smothering Sophie's fingers nearly, she shuddered as she took out her phone, trying to think of anything to say to the 911 observer. The appearance of those unmarked boxes, as well as the mysterious phrases of the every moment. The delivery men gawked at her, increasing the tenseness in the silence. Sophie, the diner, inhaled steadily and started to dial, but as she turned to her hand, froze in mid-air at the window. Eyes on the road, he was the older man from outside. That morning, moving slowly in the direction of the diner, but he wasn't by himself this time. He was surrounded by two men in fitted outfits that were blatantly professional. They were composed but authoritative, and their immediate presence changed the environment in a mediating way. Emma felt Sophie's heart skip a beat, lowered the phone and looked at Emma in a whisper, observed her stare. Her eyes enlarging, Sophie nodded in agreement with him from this morning. Her mind whirling around the elder man's earlier in the day. The worn appearance had implied that he could hardly afford to eat. However, he was strolling with men who appeared as though they were part of a boardroom. As the three of them moved toward the diner's, hold on the phone tightened. Her mind was racing with 100 questions. When the doorbell rang, the older man entered, his eyes locking with Sophie's this time. He didn't look tired or unreadable. It exuded a calm assurance. As if he had come back with Miss Sophie, he murmured in a voice, forceful but composed. "We owe you," and Sophie gave a careful explanation. Moving forward while continuing to hold the phone in her, she repeated her voice as she handed over an explanation. With a hint of both interest, and the older man nodded anxiously, looking at the two men on either side for a moment. "Yes, him. But let me first provide them, gentlemen." He indicated the man on his right, wearing a dapper navy suit. "This is Michael, one of my longtime friends. He is here to assist me with a problem I've been preparing." He gestured to the second man. Was dressed casually, although possessed a sense of power. "And this is Daniel. My former co-worker is exceptionally adept in bringing about." The two men nodded courteously to each other. Sophie's kind yet professional expression scowled a little, not sure where this was saying. "I apologize, but who are you? I mean, I have no idea what your name is." Hesitantly, the elder man asked, twisted into a small smile, as if he had been anticipating the query. "Carter. You may address me as Mr. Carter." "Emma," he remarked simply, breaking the silence. Her voice is a little cracked. "But why are what's in those crates, and are you here?" Carter inhaled deeply before his smile fading as he spoke, looked at the box stack next to the door, which I will describe shortly. "But first, you must understand that I have been in your position." His gaze was fixed on Sophie as he spoke. "Becoming kinder, I once owned it was a restaurant similar to this. Everything to me, however, after my wife passed away, and children. I also lost myself and gave up on. I sold everything I worked on and was passionate about. Everything I owned was sold at the restaurant. I only had Sophie and Emma for years." Looked at each other briefly, the weight of his tale weighing heavily on them. "But when I entered here today," Carter added. His tone was calm but passionate. "I had a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. This diner, your perseverance brought to remember my wife's enthusiasm for assisting others, and I came to understand perhaps I can accomplish something worthwhile." Sophie's breath caught once more as she found it difficult to comprehend what Carter had said. "My mind is racing to figure out what he's planning." She was about to speak when her mouth opened. Carter turned to face Daniel and Michael. Giving them a slight nod without saying anything, the pair of males moved forward and started moving the boxes after unpacking them. Thoughtful and intentional, Sophie and Emma's eyes were wide when she saw what was showed off shiny kitchenware, containing an oven, a microwave, and a refrigerator with piles of fresh plates, were in another package with ingredients. Tools and even brand new immaculate clothes for the sisters stood still on the staff, shock giving birth to an emotional outpouring as they become aware of the importance of what was happening in front of them. You, Emma's voice stumbled as she purchased all of this. Carter nodded shakily. I sold something. I would really like to make this happen for him. His hand automatically moved to his wrist as if attempting to reach for something that wasn't. My wife gave me a watch that was longer. There was a gift for our anniversary, but I'm sure if she was still here today, she would have desired. She believed in assisting, therefore I did this. Others, as your mother did. Sophie's neck constricted. You sold the take a look at your wife's. Her eyes met Carter's. Definite yes, and I'll explain why if she would remind me not to if she were here. Cling to it as another person was having trouble, she would invariably say, Carter, the while watching is a memory. Assisting someone in need generates a. Sophie's eyes filled with legacy tears. Her tone, I'm shaking and unsure of what to say. Carter, you don't have to say anything. Answered in a kind tone, just promise me, you'll continue to operate this diner. It's not merely four walls, it's a location where people can feel comfortable. Keep it in mind. Emma wiped her eyes and sniffed, disappearing. We won't, she said. Michael took a firm stride forward, with his professional manner becoming more relaxed into a Mr. Carter asked me to join with a kind grin. Since my area of expertise is transformation, my responsibility is to modernize small enterprises. Lighting in the interior furniture of your diner, design everything that can increase its hospitable and inviting to clients. Consider it as adding a new dimension to this place. Begin, and he clarified by adding, I am adamantly not interested in forming a partnership or a portion of your company. I'm available. Because Mr. Carter has faith in both you and myself. Daniel, I respect him too much to refuse him, followed his calm, comforting voice. And Mr. Carter informed me that I am a supplier regarding your difficulties, and I'm here to verify that you have everything you require to maintain the diner's freshness, components, tools and supplies for the initial months or however long it takes. You won't need to be concerned about expenses. I don't have a loan. And like Michael, want anything in exchange. Stated that we're not here to make money or a ownership in your company. We're here to help. He has faith in you because of Mr. Carter. And so do we. Sophie's mouth fell open, eyes filled with tears. I'm not even sure how to express my gratitude. Daniel S&M gave you a nice grin and shook his head. No thanks are required, just concentrate on making this restaurant succeed, that's all. The thankfulness we'll always need. Since Carter opened the final package, took a step back to see the changed space with silent contentment. Now he put his hands together and said, let's begin working. The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind. Carter assumed leadership, directing Emma and Sophie in ways they'd never. Carter's years of experience were envisioned as a cook, is seen assisting them in refining prepared meals with an emphasis on simplicity, and he recommended that memorability begin with a tasting menu that invites some residents to it. Was a calculated move to offer the food for free. A conversation-starting move in the neighborhood and spread the word about mouth does what no commercial could accomplish. In the meantime, Michael is a retired contractor and a handyman, took on the infrastructure of the diner. With care and accuracy, he fixed damaged. The worn-out counter was replaced with fittings. I constructed unique shelves to maximize the cooking area is useful. Efforts made the dining area into a functional area that relieves a lot of Sophie and Emma's physical strain and enabling them to concentrate solely on. Daniel, the supplier, provided their food. Carter's offers more than just ingredients. Direction, he assisted them in putting together a modest but competent staff of 2 servers and a kitchen helper. The group comprised carefully selected for their dependability, provide much-needed assistance to relieve the workload of Sophie and Emma as they worked to ensure the diner was completely on its while being coached by Carter. The eatery started to change. He instructed Sophie and Emma does everything, even inventory management. When engaging with clients, he frequently walked them late into the night, using methods and recipes he hadn't shared throughout the years. And he discovered Carter oneself finding a piece of himself again he believed he had lost, since he wasn't only a mentor, he was a deeply active partner. In the restaurant's success, patrons frequently wanted to hear his stories and sought him out, could enhance his culinary knowledge as months passed, and the diner developed become a bustling center of activity. Locals came in droves to sample the cuisine following the great ratings for tasting events. And soon, The once calm diner was busy every day. Workers and their families came for breakfast, visited for lunch, and regulars were discovered comfort in its cozy, welcoming ambience. One night, as the final after clients left, Sophie turned to Carter. Her voice was heavy with, "I'm not sure what kind of emotion we would have." Carter grinned the lines after finishing, "Without you." On his face, "You didn't simply reconstruct a softening, you gave me something to believe in." Restaurant. Once more, this family is at this place. Everything Emma had to get closer to wrap and putting an arm around Sophie while her G-days persisted. "Carter, you have provided us with more than we could never pay it back," she whispered quietly. For a while, the three of them stood there. Amid the peaceful buzz of the present empty diner, their mutual appreciation, an unsaid but profoundly felt relationship, and thus, the success of the diner became a shared for Sophie and Emma. The victory was the realization of their mother's desire, for it was a second chance at a life. Carter. Brimming with connection and purpose, they had constructed more together than in a thanks to the business they had established a family. Thank you for viewing Sophie's motivational tale of generosity and surprise blessings. If it made you feel something, give this video a thumbs up, please. Remember to sign up for our channel. Give it to a story-loving person of kindness and hope. Please be sure to examine the videos that are showing on your screen. They are full of more touching. We'll see you later. Stories you won't want to miss in the following one. You